Welcome to High Strangeness, where we ask questions and explore all that is strange and unexpected in our reality.
This will be a two-part episode. Episode 53 today, and episode 54 on Thursday, January 2nd, 2025.
Welcome to High Strangeness. I'm Tony, and this is the place where we talk about all things strange and unexpected in our reality. For those of you who listen to me, you know I like to talk about anything strange. But as you're starting to realize, my special love is in UAP and UFOs, those sorts of things. And one of my favorite people to talk to is the state director of MUFON for here in Utah, Dustin Eskelson. And today I have him on the show with me once again, and I'm excited to have him here. Dustin, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Tony. How about you?
Really doing good. Having fun, getting things done. And we're taping in October right now, so it's just starting to cool up. I'm loving it. How about you?
Yeah, it's starting to be fine. I'm okay with living in Utah minus the snow.
Yes.
If I get away from the snow, I'd be fine with that.
I'm into that exactly the same way. I actually have a place in St. George, so I want to live there for half the year, and be.
Oh,
up
nice!
Here.
There you go.
That's my goal at some point, but I'm still working somewhere that I have to be in the office 3 times a week, so it's hard. Yeah.
Right. Sweet. I'll move down to St. George. You got a room for me?
I'll tell you, yeah. I just
on.
want a pool for down there because the thing is I don't have a pool, and I keep thinking I can't stay there during the summer though because it's just way too hot.
And it's getting hotter too.
It
Yep.
really is. So how about for you? How things been pretty busy this fall for you?
Yeah. So some of it's more like the MUFON taking cases. Some of it's more just like state director type stuff. It's funny that I didn't know that you had a place in St. George because the more I'm like digging into the research, more I'm digging into like MUFON data. And I had this idea. I want to look at per capita counties and whatever counties have the highest incidence of unknown cases for MUFON. Mm-hmm. And so I just assumed when I crunched the numbers, you would just see all the counties in the Uinta Basin just light up. But when I crunched the numbers, I found that the top 4 out of 5 counties per capita that have unknown cases from MUFON are all in southern Utah.
Wow.
Also, there was a paper released by the University of Utah. There's a member of our chapter. His name is Rich Medina. He was one of the people that helped write the paper. They used NUFORC data, the National UFO Reporting Center data, and they did an umbrella overview of the whole U.S. And they used NUFORC data to see per capita which counties have the highest incidence. And in this heat map, just like MUFON data, southern Utah is just bright red.
Really?
Like, it's on fire. Yeah. So it's funny you bring that up because I've been obsessed with like southern Utah for a while. Even this July, we got 2 cases in a row that were absolutely fascinating. Both of them were from southern Utah. One from Beaver City and one from Newcastle / Barrel, sort of like in between the two.
Yes.
So I think southern Utah is sort of a very underappreciated for how many sightings we have. And not only that, if you look at like the MUFON data in the Utah database, the cases we're getting out of southern Utah are way more intense, more close encounters, more people getting chased by things, more missing time, more abductions. So it's just fascinating when you just kind of comb through that data and look at Utah as being, we have this Uinta Basin, which is a very well-studied, very high-activity area, but also I think there's something going on in southern Utah that possibly rivals, if not beats, what's going on in the Uinta Basin.
I mean, and on one hand, it kind of makes sense because it's so barren out there, right? Like we've all driven out that way, and you go from one place to the next, especially if you go east to west or the other direction, you go quite a bit of space there without it running into much. And you always think, I wonder what's going to happen if I get a flat tire, right? Or something. Let alone be chased by UAP.
Exactly. And that's one of those things where you kind of go, well, why is it happening in those barren places? And you're right. If it is something to do with whatever energies, whatever entities are involving with people, if they're trying to be clandestine and not want so many people to see them, and they're able to just choose one here or there, that would be the place to do it. You just have endless tens of thousands of acres of desert. And it's very uninhabitable areas that, yeah, you just drive for miles and you don't see any people, no buildings. Maybe you'll see a couple telephone wires. And it's fascinating to me that, yeah, these wide open spaces are the ones where people are talking about having experiences. And of course, one of the reasons might be because of the dark skies. You have a better vision of the night sky. But when we're talking about close encounters, even, it seems like you're starting to get more in those areas, which is kind of fascinating to me. And I don't know if you're familiar with Chris Bledsoe, the UFO of God.
Great book. I read that book too.
Yeah, he's a really interesting guy. I can't get into his story, but because it's a very long story. And actually, MUFON went out and investigated his case. And sort of to give you a quick overview for your audience, he was an experiencer. Him and his son actually were contactees by some beings. And he's had multiple, many different encounters. And one of them involved a white lady, which he describes as being, a blonde, long hair, beautiful, what we would consider like a Nordic. And he believes that she's going to come back at some point, and he's going to have an audience with him to sort of witness her. And he doesn't know the exact location, but he keeps talking about, he keeps having visions of Utah as being that place. And he thinks it's either going to be like Horseshoe Canyon, which is like right outside of Hanksville, or possibly Butler Wash Ruins, which is outside of Blanding. And I can tell you those two areas we've had some pretty crazy cases out of those areas as well, including one just last year where two women were, I believe, abducted, and they ended up seeing a giant fireball in the sky right over Hanksville. And so, yeah, that area intrigues me. And I believe within the next 5 or 10 years, some family, much like the Shermans did with Skinwalker Ranch, are going to come out to the news and say, hey, there's a lot of stuff happening on our property that's freaking us out.
Yeah.
We need people to come look at it. I think we're going to see that eventually and I think very soon, actually. I think eventually it's just a matter of time before we figure out what spot is down there that's very high active, or if the entire area is. It seems like everything around Canyonlands is very active as well.
Well, and the other thing too, if Chris Bledsoe is saying this, he has a unique way apparently of having sightings while people visit him. That's an interesting thing. So it isn't somebody who says, hey, this has happened a couple times. I mean, it keeps happening to him. So you almost feel like he's got some kind of connection,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And for anyone who wants to like follow him on Instagram, he's been posting a lot of videos of orbs that he'll see at night.
It's crazy.
And he's starting to get more and more of a following, which is very deservedly. And he's a very interesting guy who's been studied by so many different people as high up as like NASA and our government, because they're trying to figure out why him,
right?
Like what is it about him that he was picked and now he can see all these things in the sky and these orbs, and it's almost like he has a connection with them and is able to call them in.
It's weird because in a slight way, it reminds me of people that have near-death experiences, and then they're really open to paranormal. They see things, see ghosts and different things. And in a weird way, he kind of has that, but for UAP, which is weird.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, I would love to talk with him someday. He seems like a really nice guy and probably has endless stories,
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely. For you and I who are, way into the UFOlogy, yeah, that'd be a dream come true to just hang out with them. I would love to just hang out with them at night, even if we didn't see anything, right? Just like hang out,
He seems like a fun guy.
Yeah.
Very humble as well. He seems like, I've seen some interviews with him, and he seems everybody who's ever talked with him that I've heard, they say he's just the nicest guy you've ever met. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were talking about Southern Utah, and it's not just UAP, this, but other things too. I have somebody I'm going to be they've kind of tentatively agreed to talk with me about an experience they had that is more along the skinwalker side. So,
oh wow, okay.
And it's an interesting story, but we'll see if I get that interview. But it's she lives down there in southern. Well, between Nephi and Beaver, somewhere in there, but
Okay.
west a little bit. So yeah,
Yeah, I would love to hear any of those
yeah,
experiences, especially the ones that go back to Native American lore, the skinwalkers and the portals, and yeah, star people. All that's just fascinating, and it makes me happy that we kind of live in
yeah,
Utah, where you can have those kind of stories, and we're lucky because we really do have a lot of great paranormal spots, UFO spots. There's even Bigfoot
yeah.
sightings, in northern Utah. So yeah, it's a great place to be.
Well, I've got a lot of things I want to talk about today.
Yeah, hit
So,
me.
but before we do that, I want to, we're talking about having a busy fall. There was Phenomicon. I want to talk about that a little bit today too. The chapter meeting that we had, I thought was great. And,
Thank you.
For those of you out there who've not gone to one of these meetings, I'm not sure what they all do, but Dustin does a great job, and he shares cases that have happened. And I was just loving that. And hopefully we can talk about a couple of those cases today, because I think that was just interesting. I think people would like to hear that. And then I was curious, you were going to do a presentation for the Florida chapter. Did that ever happen? I know there was some hurricane issues around then.
Yeah, Hurricane Milton kind of definitely did some damage. It's crazy. I reached out to the Florida chapter. Some of the people there I've become very friendly with, and they've sent me some photos of just trees that have fallen over 100-mile-per-hour winds. Luckily, the people I've talked to are safe. There is some damage that they got to take care of. But yeah, everything's back on track, and I'm actually doing that tomorrow.
Oh, nice.
So I'll be doing that tomorrow for the chapter. And yeah, when you hear Hurricane Milton, I think of like an actual Milton.
Yeah.
Seems like a very mild-mannered guy. But man, that hurricane was a little nuts.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'd get my wife at one point said, let's move to Florida. And I didn't, because I have too many kids out here that I like to be around. But I have friends that live out there, and it's like, that's a crazy place weather-wise, right? I mean, beautiful, but like from year to year, you don't know what you're going to have to do. Leave town a couple times every other year. That's kind of scary to me.
Yeah, and it just seems like those hurricanes are getting more powerful and more powerful too. So yeah, it's just I don't that and the snakes and alligators. I don't want to.
And they were everywhere. Like I remember when we went out there to Disney or something, and I brought my kids in there. There are these little areas of just water, and I would say to my kids, one time we came out from eating dinner, I said, "There's probably alligators in there," and they were like, "Yeah, right, Dad." I said, "Watch." I took a rock and threw it in, and you saw the heads come up, and they're like, "No way!"
Oh my God!
I'm like, I told you. I lived in Florida for a little bit as a kid, and it was crazy. They were everywhere.
No kidding. Man.
Yeah, it's beautiful, just crazy. And then they've got sinkholes all over the place too. That's getting worse as well. So.
Oh wow, I didn't know about that.
It's the number one state in the United States that has sinkholes. It's pretty scary.
Oh man. Though I'm fascinated by those stories because it's weird what we take for granted. Yeah. Like the ground we stand on, we just go, "Oh, it's just ground; it's going to hold us up." But every now and again, you hear a story where someone's just chilling in their kitchen eating breakfast, and all of a sudden, the earth opens up and swallows them whole.
That's right.
And you're just like, "Whoa!"
Yeah, it's like there's no way.
I didn't think that could happen.
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, other than that, it's a fun place.
I'll visit there. I don't know if I don't want to live there.
Pick and choose when.
Right.
Oh, okay. So let's talk a little bit about MUFON here in Utah for just a couple minutes before we just go wherever we're going to go. Anything new, new investigators, new special cases that you find interesting? I know there's always cases, but is there anything like that going on that we can let people in the area know? Hey, you might run into this investigator. This might happen. Anything like that going on?
So we just announced Ben Stoll as the assistant state director, and Ben came on at like the perfect time where the state director was planning on exiting, and he was training someone at the time. And he said, "Hey, there's this new field investigator named Ben. I'll have you train him. I'll train this other person." Unfortunately, the person that the state director was working with decided to kind of not do it. And so we were stuck with Ben, and then he left. The state director left and stepped down. And so it was really just me and Ben. And he has stepped up to the plate. Like he is on the ball. Like when he does investigations, he leaves no stone unturned. he's reaching out to like local police offices and asking them about certain data. He's really hitting the pavement and going out in these places. And he's an incredible asset because he's way into the phenomenon. And also he lives in the Uinta Basin. He lives in the Vernal area. And so it's nice to have some eyes there and nice to have some ears there. And he himself has seen some wacky stuff, quite a few nights, strange lights in the sky and things like that. And he really is just like the best guy ever. And he's trying right now to create maybe a group that gets together maybe once a quarter or maybe even once a month in the Vernal area and kind of talks about things. And I would like to get some experiencers and do a chapter meeting out in the Vernal area. I think that'd be awesome to have it out in the Uinta Basin and kind of get people's perspective on that. Because I know I went to Thomas Winterton years ago, went to the senior center in Roosevelt, and he spoke. I think it was 2021, maybe. And it was just fascinating because there were so many people there. And when he said, "Hey, how many people are from the area?" and everyone, shot their arms up, and he goes, "Well, how many people have seen something they can't explain or had experiences?" And you see almost the entire room, hands go up. It's a very powerful moment, and you realize, there's something going on here, and these people have been in this place. Like, this is generational. This has been going on for hundreds of years, and really only came to light in the 60s and 70s when Junior Hicks and Frank Salisbury started looking into it and released that book, the Utah UFO Display. And so it's really an interesting piece of history that's kind of being left out because of the stigma, or people think it's kind of weird. But now with so many people interested in it, you feel alive. You go, wow, people are actually paying attention to this. And it just feels good. It feels right too. It's finally, people are finally getting their due and getting their time to tell their stories because they deserve to tell them. And I think we need to listen.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think the time where people can not feel like they have to hide these things is coming. It's here. And I love that because
it's amazing.
People have been keeping things inside. In fact, there are a couple people I've met just recently that have come out to me and said, "I've never told anybody this, but I'd like to tell you." And I'm like, this is great. I love that. You know what I mean? This is wonderful.
Yeah, that when experiencers say that is a very powerful, and you feel honored too, right? Because it's something that they don't feel like sharing with the world, or maybe they did and they got shut down, and they're like, I'm not going to tell anyone anymore because people think I'm crazy or out of my mind. And I think with the internet and social media and everyone pushing for transparency, I think it's given people more the green light to and the freedom without hate or stigma to say, "Hey, this happened to me.
Right.
This is my story. This is my testimony." And it's very powerful stuff.
And I love it because there are going to be people out there that feel alone in something they've experienced. And they'll hear these other people share something and they'll go, "Well, wait a minute. Like, I felt that too, or this happened to me too. I'm not crazy, right?" And so I think that's valuable, at least in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I love about those in-person MUFON meetings. You get a lot of experiencers. You get people who've seen things, and they get to talk amongst themselves too. It's almost like a mini support group, because I know you have like an hour presentation, but sometimes you'll talk for an hour or two afterwards, which is people, and they'll talk with each other as well. And it's just kind of a fun, cool place to say, "Hey, we're all on the same page here, and it's open. We can talk about this."
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, that's MUFON Utah. Anything going on that you're aware of in the system, MUFON system, countrywide? I mean, I know, we'll talk a little bit maybe about this hearing coming up, I think in November 21st. And there's a lot of noise around that. And I'm hoping it turns out to be something a little better than what we've seen recently. But does MUFON get involved in that at all? Any of those things? Yeah.
They do. So at least with the first congressional hearings they were involved with, I don't know if they'll be involved with these ones. I haven't heard anything yet. I imagine they would, only because they sort of have a strong history of wanting transparency. And MUFON has been very great with talking with any sort of politicians that want to move this forward for transparency. Like you, I'm sort of cautiously optimistic about what these new hearings will bring forth. I know part of you wants there to be a heavy hammer slammed down on the people that have lied in Congress and sort of hidden the truth. I won't give names, Arrow. And you want some sort of openness and some sort of ability for them to say, hey, we're sorry. We've been keeping this from the public. We want to do, and that really sucks about Arrow. I'll go back to that real quick. That really sucks. They had the ultimate opportunity to say, hey, we screwed up. We've been hiding so much from you for so many years. We got this guy named Sean Kirkpatrick who's really going to be on your side. We're going to release and be very open-minded and show you some of the stuff. And not only did they not do that, they did a lot of things that I feel was heavy-handed as far as manipulating things to make them seem like they didn't happen or that data was not a UAP. And it just felt like Blue Book all over again. And you go, damn, like they had such an opportunity. And now I go, it's such a short coming from what happened with Arrow to now. I don't know if anyone's ever going to trust the government, ever. Like the window's closed. And how are they ever going to open that back up and say, okay, we have this new program and this new person? It's almost like one of those places that says under new management. You go in like a restaurant, it's the same food, same servers and everything. And you go, oh man, I got had again. So
it's true.
Yeah, I don't know. we'll see what happens. But I'm to the point now where it seems like the people have to be the ones that are transparent and telling what happens. Because I'm tired of all the smoke screens. I'm tired of all the look this way.
Well, and
kind of tactics.
I wonder, I really think the whistleblowers, whoever's going to come out on this one is hopefully, there's some firsthand experience or something. It really wouldn't take much, like just pictures or something, something in a hangar or whatever, and I think people understand that there is real, there's security issues around having certain technology available to everybody. Like me personally, I understand that the government may need to keep something secret, but not all of it. I mean, and there's nothing worse than they're treating you like you're a stupid kid and just lying to your face. That's unacceptable.
Yeah. And it really is despicable in the sense that for the government for many, many years, when you did have a credible person that came forth that had a close encounter or saw, they would visit them, tell us everything you know. They would sit down with them, whether it's NASA, whether it's the FBI, whether it's the CIA. They would get all this information and tell them, thank you so much for serving your country and telling us your story and being honest. Then they would go hide that data and then also do schmear campaigns telling people that these people are crazy and out of their minds and that UFOs don't exist. And so you have people, I completely get why people don't trust the government when it comes to this. I don't personally. I just go like, oh, here we go again, the same song and dance where people are going to go, oh, we have nothing here. We don't have anything. And the congressmen are going to have to drill and drill and drill, and they're not going to get anything in return. And then I go, well, eventually something's going to have to crack open. And when it does, hopefully there's repercussions for people that did lie. But also you got to give us something. Throw us a bone, like something at this point. Yeah. And so part of me isn't even, I hate to say this, I'm not even excited about the congressional hearings because I go, it's just going to be the same horseshit where they ask yes or no questions and then they dance around it. And it just goes on and on and on. So I think it's eventually going to have to be just the people that somehow crack the code and come forth with enough evidence to where people can't deny it anymore.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's and it's not just this one thing. It's not to get political because that's an endless hole, but it's even what we're told in other areas by the government, where it's very clear with our own eyes what we see, and they're telling you, no, you don't see that. This is what you see. And it's just ridiculous, So this feels like that. Definitely. It's just another one of those areas.
It does. A little deja vu.
Okay. I'm going to go all over the place here. I want to get into those cases in a few minutes, but before that, I can't help it. I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that Lou Elizondo brought up in his book. And just, I'm curious about maybe your thoughts on some of those topics. And then, are you seeing anything like that either locally or in the MUFON system with some of the things that he brought up. And I'm thinking, for example, he brings up in the book this cookie cutter sphere that goes, well, I call it a cookie cutter because it goes through two tanks and leaves this hole through two tanks, and it's a little orb. And I'm like, whew. It reminds me of Skinwalker Ranch when one of their fences had a partial circle, like burned right through it. Reminds me of that, right? But this is going through two tanks. Like, this is hot, or I don't know what that is. You don't want to touch that. Are you aware of any weird things where things are getting burned through, or like getting cut through, like, hot knife through butter?
So you do get people talking about when they get close to orbs, an incredible amount of energy. Yeah. Sometimes they'll say their hair stands up on their head, their arms, because there's just so much energy coming from these things. So I can tell you, there was a case out of this sort of a roundabout way, but this is a fascinating case. I think you'll enjoy it. So in Monticello, Utah, which once again, southern Utah, and if you want to look it up, it's case 81186. So in October of 1974, we had a man and his wife camping in Montezuma Canyon. So they were at the bottom of this canyon. And it was right around the time of deer elk season as well, October, probably deer season then. And they were camping. It was kind of getting late at night, and they were just kind of hanging out, enjoying the stars. And they saw what they thought was 5 spotlights coming down the mountainside, the canyon side. And they go, oh, it's just people spotlighting for deer. And the way they were moving, eventually him and his wife were like, oh, these aren't spotlights. Like, these are moving. So he took his binoculars and looked, and he described it as being a bowling ball sized orb that was white with something just very bright, possibly something swirling in it. And he said 3 of them went above him and 2 of them went right for him. So his wife, without even hesitating, jumped in the truck. So he jumped in the truck. They drove out from the canyon. All the while, these orbs were chasing him. And he said it was quite a long ways out of this canyon and to the main road, which was Highway 666, if that doesn't give you a little bit of an omen. At the time, it was called that. And he said these things were chasing him, and he said it was scary because when they were going into the canyon, there was 3 gates that he had to open up to get out.
Oh, no.
So he had to jump out. And he opened them up, and he said, hey, I'll be honest with you, I didn't close them behind me. And I go, I wouldn't have closed them either, dude. I would have just left. He also saw, and this is bizarre, I want him to draw me a photo of this. He said they were about 6 to 8 feet tall, bell-like objects that were red and green. And he said they were everywhere. And he said they had almost like this tube that was hanging down below him. And he believes this tube was sucking up pieces of the earth, like almost like they were taking particles of the earth and things to maybe examine and look at. So their goal was they drove to a weigh station where they weigh those diesels at. So they pull in, and at the time the highway patrol was running those, and they went inside and told the highway patrolman their story. And the highway patrolman said, well, how much have you guys been drinking? That's what he asked them. They said, no, we haven't been drinking, we swear. So he goes, okay. So the highway patrolman calls the sheriff's office, tells him to come out, and he hangs up and he goes, hey, I'll let you guys know that the only reason I called the sheriff's office is because a week or 2 ago, we had this diesel driver who was driving this way, and he had these strange lights behind his diesel, and he thought it was a helicopter that was screwing with him, that would get very low and kind of just telling him. And he started getting freaked out, and he was like, he didn't hear any helicopter sound, but he saw these lights that were just behind his diesel. And when he pulled into the weigh station, some of the paint on his diesel where those lights were kind of hovering were burnt off. Like the paint on his diesel was just burnt. So he said, that's the only reason I'm going to call the sheriff out, is because we had that weird story a couple weeks ago. So sheriff comes out, and he said the canyon was pretty hardcore 4x4. They had a truck that they had to go down. And he said, please just come back with us. We're just going to grab our gear. We just left. We didn't even throw our gear in the truck. Just come with us. So they go, okay. So the highway patrolman and the police car follow them all the way back. They're at the top of the canyon. The police cars can't go down there because it's just 4-wheel drive. They said, hey, please, he told the police officer and the highway patrolman, please stay here till we come back. We're just going to throw our gear and come back. He goes, gotcha. They get down to the bottom of the canyon, and the police car and the highway patrolman just drive away.
What?
So he was like, oh, man. So him and his wife panic. They throw everything in the truck,
Yeah.
and they drive back up out of that canyon. Now, here's where it gets a little, well, I guess it was weird before. But here it gets even more weird. His goal was, he said, because they're from northern Utah, and it was a long drive back. He said, my goal was to drive back to that way station, just park the truck. We were going to sleep in the truck. Once morning hit, we'll go home. He said, next thing he remembers is waking up, and he's in his truck, and he looks out the front window of his truck, and he sees a deer, staring him right in the face. And he said his eyes were huge, like way bigger than a deer's eyes. And he wakes his wife up and says, hey, are you seeing this? And she looks at the deer and says, yes, I am. And next thing you know, he wakes up and he looks around, it's daylight. And he looks around and he sees like a farmer, like off in the distance farming. And he looks around and he's at the top of the canyon where that police officer and highway patrolman stop. Doesn't know what happened, doesn't know, what missing time. He doesn't remember really driving out of the canyon. He remembers everything up to the point of them starting to drive back to the way station to park and sleep. So to get back to your question, that diesel that originally got burned by those orbs, they do have an intense amount of energy. Also, and there's a book called The Skinwalkers at the Pentagon with George Knapp, and I think Colm Heller also wrote that with him. They talk about blue orbs as being ones that you need to watch out for, because there's been a lot of stories of blue orbs that come in contact or close to people, and not too long after they begin to have health effects, very bad health effects. And so it's always been burned in my brain that if I'm outside and I see it like a blue orb, I'm going to just run like hell. Get the hell out of there. Like, don't even go, hey, this is cool, and observe it. Just please leave.
It's funny you say that, because Lou Elizondo he talks about the blue orbs being dangerous. And that's the first time I've ever heard that. And so when I read that, I actually told my family, I said, if you ever see an orb and it's blue, run.
Right. I told my mom that too. I was like, you just get the hell out of there. Tell all my family and friends. And Skinwalker Ranch, the Shermans talk about those blue orbs would tap right into their fear center. Somehow they would get close to them, and they somehow were able to tap into someone's fear and just crank it to like an 11 and just really get them in the most kind of frightful mode that they've ever been in. And you have to ask yourself, why do they get off on that? Do they want to get you fearful? Like, what is it about these blue orbs that are not only hurting people, but they want to put fear in you somehow?
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm just thinking about this a little bit. There's a lot of different color orbs, and for the blue ones to be that toxic, really, it just makes you wonder, like, what's the difference? Like, what's going on with these?
Yeah, it is fascinating because they come in all sizes and colors, and we get them all the time: white, orange, blue, purplish, like clear. And you kind of just go, what are these things? Why are they different colors? Why are they different sizes? Why are some people constantly seeing these things and have no sort of physiological effects, and then other people see them, and then now they have leukemia and cancer and all these sort of weird effects from coming in close contact with them? And it kind of goes back to, well, are some of them evil? Are some of them good? Are some of them just there? They're just kind of part of this world and kind of hanging out, and they're not bothering you, so you don't bother them, and vice versa. I don't know if we have enough data to really explain what these are and how they affect us and why they affect us. Do they know that they're affecting us? Like, do they even know that when they pass through us that they're ending up killing us or giving us bad health issues? I don't know. There's so many things over the map, and you keep hearing so many stories. I've talked with experiencers before, especially ones that have had close contact, and or people like you were talking about near-death experience, people that constantly see orbs.
Yeah.
Like, I was talking with an experiencer where she said, I see them constantly, and I go, are you afraid of them? Do they hurt you? And she goes, no, they're just part of this world. Like, they're doing their thing, I'm doing mine. I've sort of learned to just let them be, and they've learned to let me be.
Well, and it's weird too, because you wonder, do they tap into different, are they their own thing? Or are they tapping into or intertwining with other phenomena? Here's why I say this. So not too long ago, we've interviewed some people from a paranormal seeker group, and they offered for us to come and do a case with them. Excuse me. And to come out with them and kind of experience that. So me and one of the co-hosts that I have said, sure, let's do it. So we went, just for me, it was really just to see what happens, right? And the other co-host, Bill, he's into this. Like, he's had experiences himself, and so he was pretty excited to do this. But they talk about seeing orbs, mostly on film, but when they do a review later. But it just makes me think, are there different type of orbs? They seem to think that they're spirits in a sense, but they're usually white, and they're not. They don't hurt you in any way. So I feel like they're a different kind of an orb, but it just makes me wonder, how many of these things are there? Like, do they come in and out from a different dimension? I don't know. We just don't know anything.
No. And orbs are the one thing that you really have so many different categories of the unknown. So you have the UFO world, which has orbs. You have the paranormal world, which has orbs. You even have the cryptid / Bigfoot, where certain people have said, yeah, I saw some weird orbs weaving through the forest or in the sky. And next thing you know, I start hearing Bigfoot and seeing this creature.
Yeah.
So orbs are one of those things that really transcend all areas. And it's something that MUFON, I've been in state director meetings where people argued, well, we don't investigate the paranormal, we don't investigate cryptids. But if someone sees an orb, how do we tell, are we going to go ahead and categorize this in these boxes? And it was like a big sort of argument that was going back and forth. And then finally, the person that had the meeting had to bang the gavel and go, guys, if it's an orb that was seen over, let's say, a graveyard, then I guess it's paranormal. And I couldn't help but laugh because I go, I don't think an orb cares.
That's right.
If it's over a graveyard or if it's in a forest or if it's in the sky. And my whole thing is I'm very open-minded. I think that we sort of put those constructs and we put those ideas in a box and say, oh, here's the UFO world. Here's the paranormal world. Here's the cryptid world. Here's the spiritual world. Here's the near-death experience world. And I think we're missing out on keen opportunities to look at this with a wide-angle lens and go, well, how are these connected, if they are connected? Because many people believe, and I tend to believe this theory too, that they're all connected somehow. They're all coming from that same energy source, but they're somehow manifesting themselves in different ways.
Right.
For us. It is fascinating. Orbs are one of those things where, the paranormal world gets them all the time. And the UFO world gets them all the time. The cryptid, near-death experiencers, everything in between.
Well, and not to go down this road too far, but I spoke with somebody recently about cryptids, fairies, and things like that, and they talked a little bit about the history of these experiences many years ago, and we got into a short discussion about, are they the same thing that people are just interpreting different at different points in time? To us, it's, a ghost. To somebody over there, it's a fairy. To somebody at some other point in history, it's a god. Who knows? But I think locking things down into silos is bad. So I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there seems like there used to be I was talking with some like paranormal hunters, and they asked me that question: Do you find that the paranormal world is they're only mingling with the paranormal world, and the Bigfoot people are only mingling with the Bigfoot, and the UFOs only mingling with the UFOs? And I think maybe at some point that was true, that everyone had their own faction and they sort of stuck with it. But I think those walls are starting to be torn down. And you're starting to see way, way more people that are interested in all the other things. I know I am. I'm way interested in the paranormal, way interested in the cryptid, Bigfoot, near-death experiences, spirituality, consciousness, like all those things that I feel like it's exciting and worth looking into. So I'm going to look into it. I'm not going to just I'm not just going to put my blinders on and say, hey, I'm only going to look at the UFO phenomenon.
Well, I mean, there's a show. I don't know if you've watched it. These two were actually at Phenomenon. It was Mariah Mayer.
Oh yeah,
and what was his name? Forget his name. Cool guy.
Yeah. The ex-military
right?
dude.
His last name's Accord. Yeah.
Yep.
Russell.
Yeah.
Russell Accord.
Russell.
Yeah.
Russell.
And one of my son-in-laws and I like to watch their Bigfoot show. And I was amazed as I watched their show that I saw some commonalities in what they were seeing, which really, like the 1.6 gigahertz frequency, which where else do we see that? Skinwalker, right? They also talk about temperature changes and other things. I mean, there's a lot of commonalities. And, I find myself as I'm looking at both going, man, that's this. I bet you it's the same thing. This is an interdimensional being, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah. Yeah, no.
But I think that's important because I've talked to somebody who is a Bigfoot investigator and longtime Bigfoot person, and they come from back where they were more siloed. So he didn't seem to really put much towards some of these new things that they're finding. He really feels it's more of a, some kind of a beast that's just evaded us. But I don't know. I think you have to watch all these things and see where they connect, because I think they do connect.
Yeah, I do too. And I've said that before. Like, I don't mean to throw shade on the Bigfoot. I don't know where Bigfoot comes from. It could be a being that has evaded us and sort of didn't evolve with us as far as like human beings. And it's still in the wilderness and it's still mating and still that could be. I don't know. I'm not saying it isn't true. However, I believe that they're interdimensional and they're somehow popping into this reality and then going out somehow.
But you're open,
once again, it's all the unknown
to whatever it is. Me too. Yeah,
yes,
I agree.
Yeah, I'll listen to whatever story and I'm open to whatever evidence there is. Because whenever you go into these phenomenon categories or talk about it, of course you're going to come up with more questions than answers. But it's just fun to think about and to realize that it's kind of cool that even if someone doesn't agree with me on how and why this phenomenon works, I go, thank God there's people that are sort of looking at every angle,
right,
and trying to figure out what this is, even if it turns into a friendly debate, which it usually doesn't. Most people are kind of cool and they'll just sit and listen to you, and then you listen to them. But yeah, that cryptid world's fascinating as well. Like I think one of the best books I ever read was like the Mothman Prophecies. Like I'm obsessed with Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and everything that was going on during that time period. And it just made me realize that's where I kind of thought, oh, these things are kind of popping in and out of our existence because it coincides with so many other sightings of UFOs and abductions and it's fascinating. And I need to go on more. I need to learn more about Bigfoot. I'm one of those people that wants to learn and learn and learn. If you could just pay me to read books all day, I would do that. So yeah, right now I'm really fascinated with like the paranormal and trying to do like paranormal investigations and things like that. And I'm trying to learn as I go.
Yeah.
But yeah, where'd you go on that paranormal investigation?
We actually went to a small it's a small cemetery in the middle of nowhere. So if you go, you know where Eagle Mountain is, Utah?
Yeah.
So if you go west of Eagle Mountain about a half hour, and then you go up one of the canyons back there, there's an old town that used to be there in the 1800s called Mercer. And
oh, wow.
So a lot of their dead are buried there. So it's a strange town because there were two fires. I think the first one was in the 1890s. The whole town burned down in one night. There were like 5,000 people in that town. They rebuilt it, and then in like 1908, the same thing happened again.
Shut up.
So a lot of young children and stuff died there. So it's interesting because it's not a cemetery like you've seen anywhere else. It's on the top of a hill, and you go on top of it, and you can see down into a lot of places in different valleys. But there's old wooden crosses, and most of the graves are just rocks, mounds of rocks, and it's from the late 1800s. It's crazy. So we went there, and it was very interesting to set up with the equipment that they use. They do different things with lights and string. I don't know what they're called. They're like rope lights that are sensitive to different electromagnetic changes and stuff. And they have some equipment that actually listens at a wavelength that we can't hear. And they would talk to this thing, and they'd ask it questions. And there were several times where we got an answer. And I was like, what the heck?
No kidding.
It was interesting. Yeah.
Dang, you got to hook me up with those guys.
I will for sure. I mean, they
yeah.
In fact, in a couple of weeks, I'm bringing their team in to meet their team, like for everybody. So we're going to meet paranormal seekers. I'm bringing them in, and they're going to introduce themselves, and we're going to talk about one or two of their cases. So that'll be fun. Yeah, that'll be fun. But I can definitely, the leader of that group is a lady named Janelle, and she's super cool. So we'll talk more about it. That's cool.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I love that stuff, and it's everywhere. But how do we link it? I don't know.
Yeah. You know what's crazy? Maybe I'll get your perspective on this. This just happened to me not too long ago. So I come from a small town called Wellington. It's in Carbon County, coal mining community. And my father he worked at the Wilburg mine, and he was actually there during the Wilburg fire, and where 27 people died. Luckily, he had a different shift, but he was like part of the rescue team. Wow. And so coal mining's just been in my blood. I have my grandfather was a coal miner, uncles, cousins, friends. I still have friends and family that are in the coal mining business right now. So in May 1st, 1900, in Schofield, there was probably the worst mining disaster in American history, where 200 people died, at least. There was a fire that broke out, some explosives, people got trapped. So I was like, man, that would probably be the primo spot to like go do a paranormal investigation, try and get some EVPs, So I find the location, and I was going to visit my mom anyways. Let me take a little detour. Schofield's like a beautiful lake. Let me check it out. This was just the other week, and I was driving there, and you turn off the main road, and you get on this dirt road, and it's kind of definitely something you'd want like a truck to get to. So I'm going out there, and I stop maybe like 3 miles before, and I pop out, and I just do an EVP session, see if I grab any. I don't grab anything.
Let me
driving.
Have you explain an EVP for the
absolutely
for everybody? Yeah.
Sure. I apologize. Sometimes you can stop me. EVP stands for electronic voice phenomenon. And even more specific, I've heard it called electromagnetic voice phenomenon, which I think is a little more accurate. You actually take like a voice recorder. It doesn't matter if it's digital, doesn't matter if it's audio, like one of those old reel-to-reel cassette tapes. You hit the record button and you start asking questions out loud, and you don't hear anything in the moment. But when you play those tapes back, every now and again, you get voices on there. Like sometimes clear as day, you'll get certain responses. It's pretty wild stuff. And once again, I couldn't tell you how these spirits or these energies are doing it. Because if you told me, I'm going to give you $1 million, Dustin, to have a way to where someone puts a microphone in a room, hits record, and without them hearing you, you then put something on their audio that they can play back later. I would be like, I don't know how to do that. I'm not that smart. I'm not nearly that smart. I don't know how to, that's weird. And it doesn't matter. Once again, it doesn't matter if it's a cassette tape, it doesn't matter if it's digital. So I haven't been very lucky I have not been lucky with EVPs. In fact, the only people that have gotten them are other people when I've gotten on paranormal investigations. So I kind of tell them I must be the kryptonite sometimes with this. So yeah, I pop out maybe 3 miles to the area, and I do an EVP session. I get in my truck and I start driving a little more. And I wouldn't say I'm sensitive to energies. I'm definitely no medium. I've never had any of that happen to me. I've never been considered psychic. I'm pretty still, I would say. I don't get it. I'm not sensitive to energies. I start driving and I get this really bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. And it was below my stomach. And I've never had this feeling ever,
Hmm.
Tony. It was weird. I was like driving. I was like, this does not feel
Yeah.
right. And something inside me said, "You just turn around and go home. Like, just call it a day, turn around and go home." And I say, okay, I better listen
Yeah.
for some reason. I've heard so many people say you got to listen to that before. And I'm one of those people that I'm like a dog with a bone. Like, I can't let it go. So I turn around, I drive, and I get off the main dirt road and I get back on the main highway. And I'm driving not that far from the dirt road. And I see something on the road. I go, what the hell is that? And I drive closer and I stop. And maybe 10 feet in front of me, there's an owl standing on the roadway.
What? Whoa.
So, being from the UFO world, and for those of you we talk about screen memories, where a lot of people will have memories of owls that they interpret with abductions and sightings and things like that. So I start to panic. I go, "Oh no! I'm being taken." So I grab my phone to try and take a picture, and it looks at me for a split second and flies off. Now I don't know if that has anything to do with anything. Maybe that's a complete coincidence, but I rarely see owls in the wild. They're very hidden.
Yes.
They don't let humans see them a lot. And for one to just be standing in the road, have me parked 10 feet away from it after I had that weird feeling in the pit of my stomach, just made me go, man, is something going on here?
Yeah.
Maybe I made the right choice of just going home.
Hmm.
And the sick part of me, most people would be like, maybe I'm not going to do paranormal investigations anymore. But there's something inside of like you and me and the people that are in the phenomenon go, oh man, maybe I need to go back there and check it out a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just weird. So I'm just barely getting into
Yeah.
that paranormal investigation. Although we went out to Mount Wilson, Cody and I, who you met
Yeah.
at the meeting. Cody's sort of my right hand man when we go out to those things. Yeah, we went out to Mount Wilson in September. And for those who don't know, Mount Wilson is it's in the middle of nowhere. It's in a town called I think it's pronounced Pioche, Pioche. And this area, Robert Bigelow actually owned this area. He bought it the same time he owned Skinwalker Ranch because they were looking into the phenomenon there because there was a lot of crazy stuff going on at Mount Wilson in Nevada. So I think it was 19 years ago, a man named Jeff McBurney bought it directly from Robert Bigelow.
Okay.
And there's a lot of people think that there's portals on Mount Wilson and a lot of this crazy stuff. So Cody and I go out there, we drive out there. And it's interesting when you're driving there, it's in the middle of nowhere. So you make this turn and there's a dirt road that goes maybe like, I think it's like 8 or 9 miles. I could be wrong on that. As you're driving, every so often you see a piece of what used to be asphalt on the road. So I'm like, that's weird. Like at some point, this place had to be asphalted, but it's so long ago that it's now you can only see a chunk of that asphalt maybe every half mile. So we get to the place, and Jeff couldn't be there, unfortunately, but we met with his girlfriend, Nicole. She goes by Nick Knack. That's her nickname. And she's very sweet, very cool. And she goes, so what room you guys want? Like, it's going to be just, you have the whole place to yourself. Wow. I was like, what? I was like, yeah, that's awesome. And I was praying that she would say the shaman room. And eventually she said, yeah, you can stay in the shaman room. I go, yep, we're staying there. And so for those of you who don't know, the shaman room has a lot of history with Robert Bigelow when he would go on the ranch. And if you go on the ranch, there's actually lodging there. There's several rooms. There's like a bar and a like a restaurant that they used to run in the 80s.
Wow.
And so when Bigelow bought the place, it just has that stuff there, still from the olden days. And there's this room that they refer to as the shaman room because when Bigelow was there, he said he woke up and he saw this really tall, what he described as a Native American shaman staring down at him, hunched over him, and he simply told him to leave. And from that moment on, Bigelow sold the ranch. So this shaman room has some interesting things where people have put on FLIR cameras and they've seen interesting things inside that room. So we're staying in that room, and Cody and I, we walk around the place, and Jeff is like digging into the earth. There's stories of them, something's underneath the area. They don't know if it's a bunker, if it's a fortress. They think maybe there's possibly a UFO buried under there. There's a lot of lore that goes back to this place, and we'll get back to that in a minute because there's some interesting things there. So there's this bar, very cool bar, and from what I understand is the main bar area, the main bar you sit at, and the place that they have all the booze on actually came from another building. Like they trucked it in back in the 80s whenever they had this thing up and going for people to stay at.
Interesting.
Long before Bigelow had it, long before Jeff had it. And so we were chilling in there, and we heard that there's a lot of activity in this area. So Cody has one of those spirit boxes, one of those things that flips through all the stations. And we couldn't get a radio station at all, which is good because you don't want to have that interference. So I said, you know what, let's do some EVP sessions with that spirit box, but let's wire it into my recorder because I just want to make sure that we get anything if we do. He goes, cool. I go, let me go get a cable. So I go outside the bar and I walk to our room and the shaman room. And when you walk in the shaman room, to the left, there's two beds. There's one right next to the window, and then there's one off to the side. I was on the one next to the window. And it was like a long drive there, and I grabbed the cable, and I was like, man, I'm going to just grab a snack real quick. So I sit on the edge of the bed, and I get some grapes out, and I'm making Cody wait in the bar. So to my right is the window, and you can literally reach your hand out and touch it. And there's curtains that are shut. There's maybe a foot in between that you can see out, and then there's blinds that are open. I'm sitting there eating grapes, and as plain as day, Tony, I hear 3 taps on the window. Tap, tap, tap. And I jump up, I go, hey, Cody. And I think it's Cody. Right. And I go, maybe I locked the door, but I go, no, Knickknack said we have the place to ourselves, and so we don't even need keys, and I didn't lock the door. So I'm like, Cody, I'm just yelling for him and nothing. So I call him on the cell phone. I go, dude, where are you at right now? And he goes, I'm at the bar. I'm upstairs in the balcony. I go, dude, tell me. I go, don't lie to me. Like, just be honest with me. And he goes, no, look out the window. And I looked out the window, and he's waving to me from the other side of the. And I was like, oh my God. So I was like, I'm coming over now. Watch me. I go, don't keep your eye off me. And so I walked back to the bar. Now, luckily, I had one of those DJI mics on me. So we actually caught the window tapping on audio. And it's really the only sort of paranormal thing that I've caught. But that area is just crazy. The next night we went in there and we're doing EVP sessions, and we were just asking questions. And all of a sudden you'd hear very loud pops or creaking in the bar. And first you go, oh, is it wind? Is it whatnot? But when we stopped asking questions, there would be no pops or creaks. And then one of the questions we asked was, were you the one that tapped on the window? And all of a sudden that the entire room started popping like crazy. Almost like someone was walking around upstairs and doing something. And so I'm just like, man, this place is alive for sure. And so so to go back to driving there and you see that asphalt there, I'm talking with Jeff McBurney, and Cody notices too, on the way there, there's this old sign that says airport, and it points down the same road that you go to Mount Wilson Ranch. And Cody's like, airport? What airport? There's no airport. That's crazy. So Jeff explained to me, yeah, there's an airport there. I think it's defunct now, but if you look on Google Maps, there at one point was an airport less than a mile away from Mount Wilson Ranch that has a 1 mile long runway on it. Now, some of the rumors are that they built a lot of stuff underneath the ground, possibly a mile deep. And if you are going to build something clandestine or do something like that, you're going to need to bring people in from an area, and you're going to need an airport. You're going to need to fly supplies and things in. So it makes sense to me that there would be an airport there at some point. And then once they left, whoever was studying this place, whoever was building things upon this place, when they abandoned it, either they tore up the road afterwards and they just abandoned that airport and tried to make it seem like nothing's there. Weird. And man, if that would be an ultimate get for me, if you can get Jeff McBurney on here, because he has an insane history with what has happened on that ranch to him and his girlfriend and all the people that have given him information about possibly what's going on there. There's some theories that Howard Hughes had something to do with that place. The concrete there is insanely reinforced. So like the buildings there are reinforced to the point where you go, why is everything above ground reinforced this much?
Right. And
you start thinking, well, if someone was building stuff underground, they're probably going to do the same kind of concrete work above ground as well. And he's continuously digging, and he'll find like weird stuff in the ground. He found this like giant chandelier, like multiple feet in the ground, this like lighted thing. They found tracks there. There's a meadow area which they've had a lot of drones go down out of the air. I was able to fly without any issues, but there have been videos of people flying a drone in this meadow area and it just drops from the sky for no reason. But yeah, Mount Wilson, I'm fascinated. It's one of those things where you come back and you go, man, I can't wait to go back again because there's just so much going on there.
Please join us on Thursday, January 2nd, 2025 for part 2 of this interview on episode 54.
Thank you for listening to High Strangeness. This was a glance at some of the strange that exists in our reality.